Hey, I'm gonna get started here. I hope y'all are having a great morning. Let me just make sure that I can be heard. All right, I think we're good. So let me get to YouTube. Oh, here we go. All right. Let's get started, y'all. Let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dave, Mika, Bruna, Nyla. Why were you blocked yesterday, Dave East? I thought you said something that sounded kind of trollish. If you weren't being a troll, then I'll go on the other channel and unblock you. I'll do that. See, I can be a nice person some days. So if you check out the description area, I have the link to the live stream that I did last night with Lolo Love. So when you get some time, please click the link in the description area and go check out that live stream. We had a good conversation. We talked about a variety of different topics. And as usual, once I got off the live stream, I had some carryover thoughts. So I thought I would talk about them here on this channel. You know, there are certain things that I hope that the women in this space understand, okay? Some of the people who are anti-divestment have spoken against divestment not only on YouTube, but on Twitter, Facebook, blogs, and they have done that for years, okay? So I want to now talk about the sleight of hand. I've talked about that a time or two on this channel, but basically, the sleight of hand is one of the best tools in the magician's arsenal. And basically, what the sleight of hand does is it causes you to direct your attention to the right while the magician is doing his trick on the left. Okay, that's basically what it means. So the sleight of hand is done to divert your attention from what you should actually be looking at. Okay, so if you've been around for a while, you'll know that 3 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, or even going back further, 10 years ago, Black women who were in public spaces talking about divestment and BWE were heavily trolled. And some of those women are still being trolled off of YouTube. Okay? Because the initial talking points were, oh, this is anti-Black men. Oh, you guys just hate Blackness. Oh, this is a movement about self-hate. Oh, you guys are just talking about this because you're obsessed with the private areas of non-Black men. You know, some of the same stuff you hear today. When that didn't work, there were certain Black women on public platforms where things were done to try to target them in their real lives. Okay? Also, you had people who, in my opinion, went on large-scale campaigns to try to destroy the brands of certain divested Black women. Dave East, you may have the right to your opinion, but you have to understand the space that you're in. So if you are so against the thoughts and ideas of divested Black women, that you would introduce points to the conversation that would be would be divisive, then you don't get to share those opinions here. So if you can observe the conversation without being disruptive, you won't be blocked. Okay? So yes, you had certain people who use their platforms not only to share their opinions against divestment, but to target specific divested Black women. When that didn't work, we then saw kind of what we're seeing happening today, where people want public conversations. When I say people, I mean Black men and non-divested Black women want public conversations with divested Black women. And this is something that some of you all may not know, but there are people who have publicly said that they use Black women to infiltrate Black women spaces. During the live stream I did a few days ago on my other channel, I was talking to, some of the ladies in the chat. And those ladies in the chat were saying that they observed a conversation on a live stream where someone donated to a channel saying that they wanted Black women spies to get human intel on divested Black women. So this is the position that this puts us in my opinion, okay? While it is always constructive to have conversations where you can be productive and where there can be some sort of positive change, when people have openly said that they want to infiltrate divested spaces, that they want to get human intel on divested Black women, then we have to proceed with caution. Because to anyone who is new to the concept of divestment or BWE, please understand something. Divested and BWE spaces have always, let me repeat, always been open to all Black women if you were there to listen to the message, to gain understanding. Not that you necessarily had to agree, but if you were there to listen and gain understanding, you were welcome in those spaces. That's why you have a lot of Black women on YouTube now, whether you upload content or not. There are a lot of Black women on YouTube now who came to divestment and BWE because maybe they were not originally divested, but 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 6 years ago, they came across a space that was welcoming to them where they were able to receive the message. What happened is that Black women on social media who are pro-Black started openly saying to divested Black women, we don't support you, we don't agree with you. When you see certain content being made on various channels where people are making fun of Black women who experience domestic violence, it's not just the content creators who make that content. It's the people in the comment section. A lot of times it's Black women who are pro-Black along with pro-Black men. They will be in the comment section saying that they have no empathy for divested Black women and for Black women who are in interracial relationships. So see, what you're seeing now, where you do have some divested Black women, where we have a wall up when it comes to entering spaces with certain people, is the effect. People have to understand there's a universal law of cause and effect. Our unwillingness at times to participate in conversations is not based on a hatred of Black women who are pro-Black. It's based on the fact that they have made it clear. As a matter of fact, people were making videos just last year saying that they did not want a sisterhood with certain divested Black women and certain Black women in interracial relationships. Pro-Black people who are Black women made it very clear that if you're a divested Black woman and you're a Black woman in an interracial relationship, you have no kinship with us. And please understand, it was not divested Black women who said that. It was Black women who are pro-Black. You will even see Black women who are pro-Black in spaces all over social media. Because you have to understand, I'm not just in spaces on YouTube. Okay? You'll see Black women in spaces all over social media saying, well, if you're divested, why do you talk about Blackness? Why do you talk about Black people? Why do you talk about Black men? Why? It's as we've discussed here on this channel, and other divested women have had these conversations as well. It's because it's so ingrained in them that pro-Black equals pro-Black male. It equals the upliftment of Black males. So you have to understand something, ladies, and just think about it. Because I know we're not going to all have the same opinion, and that's fine. Me sharing my opinion does not prevent anyone else from sharing theirs, okay? On their own platforms. Bear something in mind, ladies. Just like there are some divested Black women or Black women who maybe they've said they're not divested, but they agree with certain messages, okay? Just like some of those women believe that they can reach out to Black women who are pro-Black and encourage them to consider divestment. Understand that the opposite is also true. There are some Black women who are pro-Black who probably believe that they can encourage Black women who would consider divestment to instead, think about being pro-Black or Black first. And I believe that is why some of these people have gone from saying they don't want a kinship or a sisterhood or even a strategic alliance with divested Black women. They've gone from saying that to acting like we could possibly be in spaces together. And understand, divestment is not the norm for Black women. So those of us who are divested Black women, we're around Black women who are pro-Black all the time. We're around them on our jobs. We're around them in our families. So we know how to be around Black women who are not like-minded because we do it every day. But when it comes to these public conversations, understand that while some people may have good intentions, there are going to be other people whose intentions are nefarious. Do you understand that Black men on Facebook, for example, are working overtime to try to influence the narrative about divestment? I came across a conversation a few days ago where it was a Black guy on Facebook suggesting that Black women divest because they view Black men as inferior, or because it's solely about dating other races of men. And do you understand that when people take on those talking points, this is what people are doing with divestment right now. And I've said it before, and I'm going to keep saying it as long as it continues to happen. People are taking the most, put it to you like this, they're lying about what divestment is and are associating it with views that could be considered over the top. So when you see people boiling divestment down to a hatred of anyone else, that's being done, in my opinion, so that people who are against the idea of Black women divesting, so that they can take what divestment is and make it something that's very watered down. They can make it something that's bastardized. Hey, you guys. Hey, Lolo. Hey, Miss Divine. Hey, Nyla. Hey, Hecate. Hecate. Is it Hecate? Or I think it's Hecate. Good morning, all of you. So what I was saying is people are taking this watered down, bastardized version of divestment and trying to present it as the norm. And anyone else who feels differently, if we're not careful, is going to be looked at as quote unquote over the top or extreme or divisive, or, you know, not wanting to be in spaces with other Black women simply based on hatred. And it's not that. It's because we have documented reasons to be cautious around Black women who are pro-Black. Miss Divine Brown said, I view Black males as inferior, so they are right about that. Black males told me they were inferior, and I have to listen to what they say. They tell us every day what they can't do and their history. That's true. That's true, Hecate. Like, a lot of Black women who are pro-Black, they direct their frustration at other Black women. And now that we're responding by saying, well, okay, we have to protect the sanctity of our spaces. You can come here, you just got to understand where you are when you're here. It's like, it's just weird, man. Because it's like people are ignoring the last 10 years. And some of you ladies don't understand that some of the very Black men in your spaces are Black men who have used social media for years to attack divestment. You know, that's why there was a brief period of time where I was paying attention to some of the biggest detractors of divestment. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. They were all over social media dragging divested Black women. And I'm telling you, now that hasn't worked, and I said this before, people are softening their tone, and they're going to use the fact that there are some women in this space who are going to be open to those conversations. They're going to use that to try to shift the direction of the conversation. It may or may not work, but I'm telling y'all, that's what they're trying to do. And they've gone from attacking all divested Black women to now saying, well, there are certain things we can support And they're not just doing it on YouTube, and it's not this. It's I'm gonna put it to you like this: it's not the same group of Black men targeting divested platforms on YouTube versus Twitter versus Facebook. That's why I'm telling you all this is a large-scale effort to direct the narrative. It's a large-scale effort to undermine what divestment actually is. I've seen it. That's true, Lolo. You said it's ridiculous that we have people lying, saying they're divested and don't support BWE divested channels. Let me tell you something. We talked about that before. I don't know if we talked about it online or offline, but you just have to pay attention. You have to pay attention to what people say and what they actually support. Because understand something. None of me saying be cautious, be careful, and be aware is suggesting that Black women who don't think like us are automatically evil in every aspect of their lives, right? There are a lot of people who have used their platforms in ways that have been damaging to divested Black women, but they might be nice people to the people that they actually like, right? But let's be honest, it's nothing to be nice or kind to people that you're like-minded with. An indicator of your character is how you treat those that you disagree with. And let me tell y'all something. If divested Black women use their platforms to make fun of Black women in relationships with Black men who died due to domestic violence, we would never be forgiven and we would never be accepted in certain spaces. And see, people keep bringing something else up. So I'm going to address it without mentioning these two content creators' names, because these two women have brands that are very successful both on and off YouTube. But people keep saying that because you had two Black women content creators who publicly disagreed in the past and they were able to patch it up, they're saying, well, that's an example that maybe it could happen in these other situations with Black women who are pro-Black. Let me tell you what the primary difference is, because I'm a witness to it because I was watching the live stream when it happened. The difference with those two women is that they were woman enough to publicly apologize to each other. And mainly the apology came towards the Black woman who is divested and in an interracial relationship. That woman received a public apology, and they in turn were able to apologize to the other person. And so that is why I believe that they've been able to come together and even at various times collaborate with each other. Because in that case, people were able to take ownership and accountability for the way that they had perhaps hurt, other Black women. Do you understand that anytime that I have suggested that Black women who are pro-Black, who have used their platforms to target the brands of divested Black women and to make fun of Black women who died due to domestic violence simply because you didn't like the way their relationship looked. Anytime I have suggested that those Black women who are content creators, if they want to be believed when they say, okay, we're open to conversations, it would go a long way to say, well, you know what? I know that I had content that was damaging to divested Black women. And for that, I take accountability. If you don't want to say I apologize, for that, I take accountability. I take ownership for that. Do you understand that would go a long way? But my opinion from the very beginning of all of this has been that divested Black women are being asked to accept a one-sided compromise. We're being asked to enter spaces with women or have conversations with these women who have, listen, part of the vitriol against divestment and part of the hatred that some Black people have for Black women in interracial relationships is because some of the content that YouTube has allowed to sit on its platform has created an environment where people feel comfortable being nasty towards divested Black women. It just is what it is. So when we're asked to be open to have conversations with people who said they don't want a sisterhood with us, they don't see any kinship with us. When we're asked to be open to those conversations and people are not even willing to say, I take accountability for the things that I've said in the past. I'm sorry if those things have been hurtful or damaging to you in real life. I understand that when I tell my audience that I want them to send me pictures of Black women in interracial relationships, how that type of harassment could be problematic for those Black women in real life. Anytime we suggest, okay, some ownership and accountability needs to be taken for those things, it's a problem. It's a problem. Let me look at you guys' comment. I think so too, Nyla. That was a great live. It was good to see them come together. Lolo says, I'm over the imposters trying to dictate what divestment, swirling, and BWE is. How are you going to explain something you don't participate in? Miss Divine Brown is Davies, the Black male up in here acting like he wants to understand. I need confirmation if he is a Black male so I can block. I'm allergic to them. They come around and my ass starts to itch. I believe I had to block him on my other channel yesterday because he was being disruptive to the conversation. So you all are moderators. So you guys can moderate as you see fit. If someone is disrupting the conversation and you want to time them out, I don't have a problem with it. Because people who ask what divestment is, do you understand that when you want to research something, you look it up? You know, this whole conversation about the dual identity of Black women and the double forms of discrimination we face, these conversations have been had for decades. And when Black men and non-divested Black women had the opportunity to try to understand it, instead of trying to understand it, they laughed at women like Alice Walker. They called women like her and Kimberly Crenshaw feminists like it was a derogatory term. They've accused Black women who acknowledge our womanhood of being, you know, man-hating, because acknowledging who you are as a Black woman is automatically viewed as hatred. So a lot of times when people want these public conversations, for some people it is about understanding, but for some people it's about trying to publicly debunk or to publicly influence what other people think. Because if people were trying to understand, then it would be very simple for people to get why you have Black women who would not be comfortable in the same chat box or the same comment sections with the same Black women who have been in other spaces saying that they don't care about the plight of divested Black women or Black women in interracial relationships, with the same Black women who would say, well, if you're divested, then okay, but why? And it's not just Black women, it's Black men. Why are y'all talking about Blackness? Because at the end of the day, no matter what space I'm in, I'm still Black. There's nothing about divestment. There's nothing about divestment that gives you a magic pill that changes your race. So no matter what spaces we're in as Black women, we can still experience gender discrimination, racial discrimination, and we have the right to talk about our experiences. We have the right to talk about people who are targeting us. Because you notice, those same people will never go to pro-Black channels and say, well, if you're not divested and you're not in an interracial relationship, why are you talking about divestment? Why are you talking about interracial relationships? They feel like they have the absolute freedom to judge and critique divested Black women. And then when we respond, and sometimes we're not even responding to them, we're simply having conversations about our experiences. Here comes the gaslighting. Here comes the deflection. Hey, love him. Hold up. Let me do that. Okay, there you go. Hey, love him. I made you a mod. I'm sorry. I thought I had modded you on both channels. It's the gaslighting. It's the deflection. It's the, oh, well, you guys are so mean because you only want to deal with blah, 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 blah. No. It's not mean to look at people who have made it clear that they want nothing to do with you and be skeptical when they start acting like they want conversations. There's nothing mean about it. It's nothing rude about it. And frankly, it's an insult. It's an insult for people to suggest that it is. And we have to understand something. People can come to these conversations and be introduced to these messages without us having to feel like we have to sit in spaces with people who have made it clear that they hate divested Black women. If they want to be introduced to the messages, that's fine. That's why the conversations are had publicly all over social media. Some of these same people who are acting like they're trying to understand, look at certain platforms with divested Black women and say that those Black women, quote unquote, hate Black men. And it's like, well, see, when you boil down all of the important conversations that Black women collectively are having about divestment, when you boil it down to hatred, then that shows me that you're not here to listen. Thanks, love him. You're right, Lolo. The door has been open. The door has been open. And that's why it's even more important for people to have spaces where they say, well, okay, other spaces do different things, but here we have to protect the sanctity of what this is. We have to. Yep, Mika, you said all they do is lie, deflect, deny, and clown around and pretend divested Black women are crazy. Do you understand that divested Black women have been saying for years what divestment is, what it means, what it doesn't mean? And these people will still say, oh, They'll still try to make it about something that we have clearly said is not about. Yep. Boom, Miss Divine. You said you spoke this very thing on the other live. You called it to a T. They come in and pretend to want to understand, get an answer, and go back and forth, disrupting the dynamic. Because what they're doing is they're looking to debunk. And I get that we all have various relationships and friendships with people. Okay? So I understand that if you are personally friends with someone, you might legitimately feel like they're a nice person, and so on and so on and so forth. But let me just say, and I have to say this because it's been on my mind, and I know to the people who hear it, they might feel a certain way about it, and that just is what it is. That same way of thinking is the reason why Uncle Junebug is 65 years old. He's been molesting kids in the family since he was 17. And grandma and auntie and big mama and them have never reported him. Because they love Uncle Junebug. He comes to the cookout. He's funny. He's a cool person. But even though he's doing something to damage the Black children in the family, because he's a nice person and because he's cool, no one reports it. No one wants to see him go to jail. This is the same thing that the Black Woman Collective does with R. Kelly. Oh, I know all of these women have said that when they were young girls, they were sexually abused by him. They were sexually taken advantage of by him. But I like his music, so I'm going to keep playing his songs. I'm going to keep listening to him. I don't think he should go to jail because, they like the way he looks and they like his music. Now, I'm not comparing a content creator to someone who molests children, but think about the mentality of overlooking the ways that certain people have hurt Black women simply because you personally like them or you like certain things about them. I know the examples I used were out there, but the mentality is the same. That's true, Miss Divine. We can't go back and forth with people and give them energy. Lolo, you said you have content creators who ride the slogan on, I support Black women and girls. Yep, I got cussed out, Lolita. And that's something we have to take into consideration as divested Black women in general, because people are paying attention. If we say that we support Black women and girls, we have to be mindful of the fact that people are paying attention to our public interactions with other Black women. And, we were told that we were triggered by Black men. All of that. And so if people really believe that some of the conversations we're having are based on being triggered, then that's even more reason for us to have spaces where we're protecting what the message is. I'll say it like that. Because you guys have to understand something. The trolling that some of us experience is kind of out there, particularly given the fact that we have small channels. Like, it's just weird. I found at least 3 channels where, at least on one occasion, I was recorded and some other ladies were recorded. And I know that is only going to get worse as the channels grow, It's only going to get worse as the channels grow. Mika said he kept asking, he kept asking questions that were already answered. And had the nerve to ask who's harassing Black women. I'm telling you, because they're in the space. Because Black men and the Black women who support them get very angry and emotional when Black women share our experiences. And it's always been like that. It's been like that since before social media. When Black women who were part of the Black Panther movement talked about how they were being sexually harassed, in some cases raped, in some cases being beat up over differences in opinion, very high-ranking members of the Black Panther movement told those Black women that if you talk about those experiences, it's going to make Black men look bad. It was no empathy for the fact that those women were abused. It was, oh, we don't want to make these guys look bad. Thank you, love him. That's always been what the conversation is. So what they're doing when they come, and love him, you know it too, because you deal with trolls. Love him has a much larger channel than I have. Her channel's larger than Lowe's. And anytime you go into Love M's live streams, you can count on it. She's going to deal with trolls. They don't listen. Somebody else who deals with trolls. And listen, baby girl, I know you don't like to get into drama, but someone else who deals with trolls. Crystal Swirls on a massive scale. Look at what happened to her a few months ago. So the divested spaces that deal with the worst trolling are those of us who are not, those of us who are calling stuff like it is in the ways that we see it. Okay? Black men and their supporters are not out here trolling spaces that they're invited in. And that's just the reality. So understand, protecting the sanctity of the spaces is going to mean we're going to have to deal with the level of that. But it's like you got to deal with it. Block and delete. And like Miss Divine said, don't let anybody deflect from the conversation. That's what she basically was saying. Because when we give it energy, it takes away from the message, and that's what they want. Nala said you almost wanted to curse him out. It's too early for you to come in with your bullshit. I know that's right. Yep. Miss Divine said, Lolo, they really can't fathom a Black woman who wants nothing to do with them nor hear and follow what their bubblegum asses have to say. In the event we rebuke them, they want to agitate us. Lolo said, yes, ma'am. They are narcissistic, aggressive, vile, violent creatures that were created by their Black power, pathetic mammy. Exactly. Exactly. And do you listen? Black people, Black women, Black men, they have no problem understanding it when Black men say that they want to protect the sanctity of their spaces. You have Black women who have been on social media for years basically saying that they believe that Black men have the right to share the opinions that they share about Black women, even if those opinions are vile. Even when Black men have used their platforms in ways to be very negative towards Black women. And at this point, I think that a lot of divested Black women just no longer go on to the channels so as not to be disruptive. But it's like people are so bothered by divested Black women in our conversations that they have to insert themselves in it. And I'm telling you, it doesn't just happen on YouTube. Any space on social media that I have found with divested Black women where it is not like a private or closed group, they do the same thing that's happening on YouTube. If people are genuine in these conversations, that's fine. And there are some people who probably are. But what I'm telling y'all is that we would be completely dumb to not be cautious when these people have openly said that they want to infiltrate certain spaces. African diaspora. There's no such thing as voting Black. But see, this is an interesting question. But see, that question comes up because what do we know about most Black women in the U.S. who vote? Most Black women in the U.S. who vote are Democrats. Right? And so there are a lot of implications for people when they hear about Black women divesting. Perhaps they're also wondering how this is going to affect our politics and how we make certain decisions politically. Now understand, back during the 2016 election cycle, you had Black men all over social media saying that they specifically were either not going to vote or were going to vote for Donald Trump, specifically because they wanted to see impoverished Black women suffer. They wanted to see those women lose any housing and food assistance that they had for themselves and their children. They didn't say they were voting for Donald Trump because they supported his policies or that they thought his policies would be good for Black families, Black children. None of that. They were voting specifically in a way as they were voting as an act of defiance against Black women. But, you know, to answer your question, Africa, I vote based on what's best for me, my family, my household, my community. I am compassionate about certain things, but I try not to vote based on compassion if doing so would mean supporting politicians with policies that I think would be damaging, you know, to my personal situation. Exactly, Lee. Divested Black women vote for whatever politician, party, or issue impacts them. Yep, Lolo said it. They vote for the candidate and policies that are beneficial to them. Miss Divine said, these ninjas bust nuts torturing us. I've tried to get Black women to see that. It's like Black women and girls are in an electric chair and they love hitting that zap button. Yep. Yep. Carnisha said, I'm like, why do Black men and their mammy lap dogs worry about how divested Black women, why do they worry about us and how we move in our spaces? And why are they bothered by us? Yep, it's because they view us as a threat. Now, understand that for years, divested Black women and Black women in general were told that we were being sensitive and overly emotional when we were concerned about certain content that was being produced by Black men. We were told, oh, it's no big deal. It's just entertainment, so on and so forth. Divested Black women have been told the same thing when we have expressed concerns about the content that is made that's anti-divested Black women. And these conversations, this content was being uploaded on channels that are much larger than most of the divested spaces on YouTube. And we were told, oh, it's no big deal, blah, 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 blah. But yet, when you go on to any divested Black woman's channel, any divested Black woman's channel that you find, where they are they're very protective about their space and their messages, and that their messages are purely divested, those Black women are trolled heavily. And the larger their channels get, the more they're trolled. So now they understand how Black women have felt for at least the last decade. Yep, Lolo, Love Them does go hard. She's on fire, y'all. You know what? I'm gonna answer your question, African diaspora. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. Here's the thing. No one can vote for reparations right now because there's no clear plan in place. Okay? I've had this conversation with people in my personal life, but basically, you have people talking about reparations. But let me tell y'all something. We gonna do this since it's Sunday morning, okay? Do you realize? Let me look this up so I get the year right, okay? Let me look this up. Because I brought this up to my husband, and it was a good conversation, but it got a little heated. The American Revolution ended in 1783, right? It started in 1765. So when you think about reparations, how can you go after the US government for reparations for a period of time when there was no US government? So people talk about slavery existing in what is now known as the United States from about 1619 to 1865, right? The end of the Civil War. But what I haven't heard people talk about is, well, prior to the end of the Revolutionary War, there was no United States of America. So even when you look at the time period that people are talking about, if Black people who are pro-reparations took that conversation to Congress today, or if it went to a federal court, if I'm someone acting on behalf of the US government, I would say, well, wait a minute. For this period of time prior to the time that there was actually a United States, there is no conversation about reparations unless you go to the colonial powers. That's one thing. Secondly, how do you establish who is actually eligible to receive reparations? You understand that a good 15% of the Black people in the US today are not the descendants of the Black people who were enslaved in the US. So how do you establish who's eligible for reparations? Another part of the conversation is that in certain parts of the country, by the time the Civil War had ended, you had a lot of areas where slavery either no longer existed in the US or people had been freed from slavery. So if you come from a family, because there are Black families like this that exist, if you come from a family where your relatives were freed at some point in a will. That happened. I found the will where my relatives on my mom's father's side were freed in the 1700s. So in that situation, do you get reparations if your family had like 100-year head start and they were freed from slavery prior to the end of the Civil War? So, right. How do you establish who's eligible for reparations? How do you get around the fact that one of the easiest ways to debunk this conversation is that there was no such thing as a United States or a United States of America in 1619. And technically, it could be argued that there was no such thing as the United States of America prior to 1783. And so technically, there are people who could pretty much argue that the reparations discussion would start at 1783 and end in 1865. And the people having these conversations about reparations have no valid argument against that, from what I've observed. You know, where does the money come from? How is it paid out? You know, there are just a lot of things. But right now, no Black person or no one in general can vote based on reparations because there's not an actual plan. There's not an actual plan that addresses any of the things that I mentioned. And another thing, for people who are having these reparations discussions, are you prepared for the fact that there are going to be some white people, some white people will be eligible for reparations? Because in parts of the South, at least 80, I think I saw something that said that at least 80% of some white people in parts of the South have up to 18 or 19% Black ancestry. So they probably had a great grand something somewhere that was Black and possibly was a slave. So if white people have ancestors who were enslaved who would be owed reparations, are you prepared for that possibility? You know, it's just a lot. It's a lot to think of. Lee Stowe said, you agree reparations for slavery, a legal practice, is silly. Now, Black folks sued for reparations for Jim Crow. I'm telling you. Let me see. Miss Divine said reparations for Black women and girls will go to balling out on Pookie. Now they will be begging women with more money to be down for Tyrone. Yep. I like RWS Exposed too, Miss Divine. So yes, those are my thoughts on reparations. I don't think that people are prepared for how that conversation would actually go. Okay. Oh, African diaspora. Do y'all see? You said, ladies, I have to be honest. I'm with my boyfriend who was blocked, Dave East. Okay, baby girl, that's a good example of something that we've talked about. Remember, ladies, how we talked about how Black men will use Black women to get into certain spaces, okay? Lee Stowe said, I would support suing for losses. Black folks suffered under Jim Crow. Black folks were freed, then we were citizens, so we have a better case with Jim Crow reps. Yeah, see, I would be cool with Like I think it was Rosewood, where that was a town that was burned down, and the people who were impacted by that, where they lost property and lost businesses, they were actually able to get a form of reparations. So if you have Black people that can prove that their families lost property due to Jim Crow, due to lynching and stuff like that, then I think it'd be an easier case for reparations, and one that people would more likely, you'd be more likely to win that. Yep, Carnisha. Don't they know it's going to be some white people who would be able to qualify for reparations? What if you had white families whose Black ancestors who were enslaved through the end of the Civil War? Those white families would be entitled to more reparations than I am, because my maternal grandfather's family was freed in the will in the 1700s, and they were given land. And some of that land we still have to this day. A lot of states, well, I'm not going to say a lot, but some states have digitized their microfilm records. So you would be surprised what you can find about your family members if you have some of their names going back into the 1800s and beyond. You'd be surprised what you can find. And I'm telling you, some of y'all would probably find something similar, because we didn't know that. We didn't know that until we found it in a record. And also, it's an online space that we went to, and we were able to connect with some of their other relatives who actually had a copy of the will. You're right, Lolo. They don't think it through. See, African diaspora. Boo, I didn't say we shouldn't get reparations. I'm explaining to you that with the way the conversation is currently happening, it's some stuff y'all got to think about. But see, reparations is such an emotional topic that people aren't able to fully think it through. Because I'm telling you, people in Congress or lawyers for the federal government, one of their first arguments would be, well, how can the U.S. be responsible to pay reparations for a period of time when the U.S. government did not exist, where there was no United States? I'm going to tell y'all something. If y'all get reparations, it's not going back to 1619, because in 1619, there was no U.S. Unless you go back to Great Britain, or depending on what part of the country you were in, France or Spain or wherever. Thank you tonight. I wasn't saying, y'all get what I'm saying. Miss Divine Brown said, a fool and his money will soon part. Yep. Art of Treasury. Okay, you said you just saw about how all this divesting stuff started. That's cool. Lolo said, African diaspora, you are purposely being obtuse and misinterpreting what Leah said. I never heard Leah say she didn't believe Black people don't deserve reparations. Stop being a belligerent mammy. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying, y'all? When we invite people into spaces and try to explain things, you see what happens? They purposefully twist the meaning. Really, Art of Treasury? You think so? I would be very, well, I'm not going to say I would be shocked. Sometimes it's shocking to me that people, I'll put it to you like this. I would be very shocked if someone with a channel that large would be concerned about this conversation. Just because, like I said, but it goes back to what I I was saying earlier, those of us with very small channels still deal with a lot of the things that we're seeing in the chat right now. And I get it. It's more difficult to do this with the larger platforms. So what people are doing with smaller divested channels is pretty much trying to shift the narrative before the channels can get too large. That's possible too, Lee. Dave and African diaspora are probably the same person. Nyla Moon, I can just see it now. Stores being full of blacks buying nigga trinkets. Miss Divine Brown, you said if you watched Game of Thrones, I am the three-eyed raven, the world's memory when it comes to the gender war. Yep, just like the Jews, I remember. Carnicia said, look, reparations is going to include all races with some black ancestry in their family line. I'm telling y'all. Because you have so many people in the country who have, everybody is not just one particular race. As a matter of fact, I would say that it's probably extremely rare to find anyone in the US who is all one race. So those of you who are concerned about reparations, don't get mad when you start seeing white people, Native American people, people with Latino ancestry. Don't get mad when you start seeing damn near everybody being eligible for reparations because they had a black ancestor way, way, way back who was enslaved. Yep. Lee said African diaspora's real goal here is to shame black women into throwing our support to all things black. And I'm going to be very, very honest with you all. Because the topic of reparations is such an emotional conversation, the first time I started thinking about it and then talking about it, I wasn't objective enough to sit back and think like, well, wait a minute, how would this actually happen? When I sat down and thought about it, I was like, yo, this isn't going to look the way people are thinking it's going to look. Another thing when it comes to the reparations conversation too, just to throw another monkey wrench in it, okay? You're going to have black people in places like Canada, Mexico, parts of the Caribbean, and West Africa who would be possibly eligible for reparations from the US government, assuming that it happened. Why? Because you had a lot of black people who left the US South and moved up to Canada. Some of them moved to Mexico. Some of them went to the Caribbean. You had black people who went and established places like Liberia. So it's not as cut and dry as people think. And that's probably why there are a lot of politicians who are basically telling y'all it's not going to happen, or if it does happen, it's not going to happen the way you think it is. Lolo Love said, African diaspora, are you a vile Negro male troll? That's true, Art of Treasury. You said everything starts off small, and when successful, there will be growth. Oh, okay, you guys talked about that. Nyla Moon said, and they're going to complain because whites with African ancestry are going to be included. I'm telling y'all, preparing y'all for that right now if it happens. It's not just going to be black people. Y'all are not going to get money from the US government for any period prior to the American Revolution, because before that, there was no United States. I'm okay. Miss Divine said, reparations is you living in the US. Everything black women get, they get from the white man and the government. They've been paid 1,000,000 times over because they're white men. Oh, because their men haven't built shit for them to live off of. That's a good point. That's a good point. And do you understand the amount of money that people have calculated would be owed with reparations? Okay, like the U.S. government doesn't even have that much money. No nation is going to bankrupt itself to pay out reparations. I do think that the Black people immediately following slavery should have gotten reparations. Now, some people would argue that because they were illiterate, right, that they wouldn't have known to pursue it. But you got to think about how deep this goes. You had Black people in the early 20th century who called themselves the talented 10th. People like W.E.B. Du Bois. You got to wonder why Black men like him, who had the education and the knowledge and possibly the connections, why they didn't pursue reparations. Booker T. Washington, the NAACP, I believe, was founded in 1909? Why didn't those Black people pursue reparations? Do you understand that up until maybe 50 to 75 years following the Civil War, the reparations conversation would have been easier to have, even if they had just gathered the information to say, well, these are the people who would be eligible. Because if that information existed, we'd at least have a book or something somewhere, like right in the Library of Congress, where Black people could go to and say, oh yeah, I can prove that these people were my ancestors. You know how much easier it would be? But the Black people who had the knowledge, who had the information, who had the education, who were part of these organizations, the Black people who really could have pursued this conversation and at least, it would have been more possible, they weren't concerned with that. They weren't concerned with getting paid back. They were having all these conversations about, okay, we're the talented 10th versus Booker T. Washington versus these people versus these people. So that's another argument that the U.S. government would have. The Black people who were directly affected by slavery didn't want reparations. So asking for it, 154 years after the fact, that's like your grandma got in a car accident 50 years ago, and now you want to file a lawsuit. Okay? Yes, Carnisha, they would complain. Because they don't understand. Liso said, Phil advised Stage trying to get Black women to be romantically loyal to Black men. Yep, even though he has a white wife. Lolo says, African diaspora has zero sense of self-preservation and is here to project Hurricane's talking points. Just another Blackistan handmaiden. I'm telling you. Yep, Carnisha, I've seen people make that argument too, where they feel like Black people with slave ancestry should be able to go to college and universities for free. And you're like, well, all other races, including whites, would be able to as well, because Black people are not the only descendants of slavery. Why? Because throughout all of the movements that were supposed to be about collective empowerment for Black people, Black men made it clear that they had the right to pursue relationships with non-Black women. They have produced most of the biracial people in this country. And you have to think about it. Over time, if some of those children grew up and married into whiteness and had children, a lot of those people now have grandchildren and great grandchildren who would be classified as white today. So people don't get it. Reparations, child. Thank you, Lolo Love. You said America has military power, but America is bankrupt. Hello. You know what the national deficit is? The country would basically go insolvent to try to pay out the amount of money that these people are talking about. Yep, Garnisha. You know, those conversations should have happened immediately following slavery. Or, yep, you're right too, the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was really, even back in the 1950s and into the 60s, you know, there weren't as many Black people in the country who did not have a background of being the descendants of enslaved people here. So you probably would have had, I would just say the Black people had the momentum during the civil rights movement to pursue that, but possibly could have pursued it even during the Reconstruction era. Because you had, what is that guy's name? Hiram somebody. But you did have Black people during the Reconstruction era who had positions of political power. You did have some Black people during the Reconstruction era who were well educated. And when I say Black people, back in the after 1865 and into the late 1870s, the Black people I'm talking about were Black men that had those positions. And there was at least one, I think the guy was from Mississippi, that was like the first Black senator or something like that. But they could have used their positions to have some of these conversations. During the time when you had white businessmen donating money to help build HBCUs, okay? A lot of the HBCUs in the South, they got the money from white businessmen. Those Black people and those Black men with those connections to those white men could have possibly tried to have some conversations about reparations, because it was a topic. Because I believe his name was, let me look it up, but I think his name was Thaddeus Stevens. I'm not always good with names, y'all. I'm sorry. So I gotta look it up to be sure. Yeah. Thaddeus Stevens. In 1867, presented a case for reparations in the House of Representatives. Now, I understand it wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be easy, right? Because the peace between the South and the North was very rife with tension. But I'm just saying that at that time in the country where you had U.S. troops stationed in the South for over a decade, so certain protections were in place, the Black men who had positions of power could have tried to have those conversations about reparations, particularly since you had a white congressman, who was introducing a reparations bill to the House of Representatives. And the Black men at that time in positions of power didn't pursue it. Hey, one-sided. Right. You said at African diaspora and Dave East names. Here she is repping the whole race while Dave East is named after a colorist, race mixing rapper. Of course, she's here agitating, infiltrating in his absence. So that's why I'm saying it's like, you know, she's here today, so we just gonna let her know what she's talking about is not gonna happen. And it, because I'm telling you, you can't, I'm not gonna say you can't, but in the cases where people have received reparations, they pursued it pretty much immediately after they were wronged. And so people are pointing out that, oh, well, you have some people who were, they were victimized by the Holocaust and they recently received reparations. But do you know why? Because pretty much immediately following World War II, Jewish people started keeping records of who was affected by the Holocaust, whether you lost land, whether you lost family members, okay, because of the policies of Hitler. They kept records. So they didn't start pursuing reparations 150 plus years after the fact. But you know what? I'm going to let them find out on their own. There's an organization called CARICOM that's been working on reparations for the Caribbean nations for at least a decade. Because this isn't something, listen, you can't take conversations off of social media and present them to Congress without a plan. But to answer your original question, African diaspora, would I vote based on reparations? There's no way to do that. There's no way to do that because there's any politician talking to Black people about reparations is doing it because they're pushing an emotional hot button. That's truly the majority of Americans are not going to vote for reparations because we're too far removed from slavery. It's unfortunate for the Black people who were slaves, but Yep, Carnisha, you said America is a war country. All our money goes into the military and military contracting, and yep. One-sided said, you just found out in the book of The Handmaid's Tale that the Black man who plays Luke was actually white in the book. But Becky made him Black in the series. That's interesting. Right. Nyla said, you don't know whether or not to feel embarrassed for her or to laugh more. You didn't know that Davies was the name of a colorist driver. Yep. Miss Devine said, they make it too easy. Pro-Black women / treasonous witches are easily the laughing stocks of the world. I'm telling you guys. I'm telling you. See, this is part of the reason that the divestment movement is important for those Black women who can truly connect to it. Because voting based on reparations is not going to be beneficial to Black women at all. We have real life issues to deal with. We need to be concerned about the economy, jobs, infrastructure, healthcare, national security. Okay? Miss Divine said, not only a colorist rapper, but one with a Spanish baby mama. Oh, that's right. Who made a colorist statement about their baby. Even if that is somehow dude's real name, is ironic. Is that the guy, the woman said something about the baby's complexion, like as soon as the kid was born? Mm-hmm. That's true, Lolo Love. You said white women in the media love to perpetuate the stereotypes of of the mud shark in the bed bug. Yep. Mm-hmm. Carnisha said, look, black people could argue, say that sharecroppers who shared farming, maybe, yeah, during the restoration period should be compensated, but that's true. That's true. It would also have to apply to all races. And even then, like, Reconstruction was like over what, by 1877 or 1878? That's such a long time ago. But, if they have records that they were impacted by it, then perhaps. Liso said, here's the gag. African countries were in trade partnerships with colonies to sell slaves. Is ADOS going to sue African countries for reparations? Do you understand? And I believe I did this on my other channel maybe a month or so ago. Listen, and this is an African source, okay, that collected the names of about 17 or 18 Africans who were active participants in the slave trade. I did the live stream on my other channel. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Hold up. Let me see if I can find it for y'all. Because when I say it, it's going to sound weird. Let me see if I can find this. Oh my gosh. If not, I have to link the live stream. But there was a guy. What was the name? There was a guy who was sending his son to, I think, Europe for education. And during the trip, his son ended up being kidnapped and sent to Barbados or somewhere like that. I'm telling you, the guy found out about it and was able to get his son's freedom. And the son came back home and ended up working in the slave trade. You did have people like, I think her name was Queen Nzinga of Angola, who tried to mount a protest against the African leaders around her who were participating in the slave trade, but she was outnumbered. Because what they would do is they weren't necessarily just trading slaves for money. They were trading their fellow Africans for guns, alcohol, and jewelry. And the reason they wanted the guns is so that they could basically have a leg up in these, skirmishes with rival tribes, okay? So the African leaders who tried to fight were outgunned and they were outnumbered. You have to understand that some of these African civilizations that people are uplifting were built on the slave trade. They were built on the slave trade. So reparations, yeah. And that's another argument that I would make if I were a lawyer arguing this case on behalf of the U.S. government. I would say, well, what about the African kingdoms who actively participated in this? Because you got to understand, If you look up history, up until sometime in the early 1800s, it was very difficult for Europeans to go into the interior of Africa because there was no malaria vaccine. Okay? So that means, let me see. Let me look this up again. Because it was a big thing. It was like a huge thing when they first came up with some of those vaccines. And it was also a huge thing when you had some of the first expeditions into the interior of Africa by Europeans. So I'm telling you, in a lot of cases, whether you're talking about the European role in slave trade or Arabs, the Europeans and the Arabs were primarily dealing with the coastal regions of Africa, and you would have Africans who were slave traders who would capture other Africans and bring them to the coast to sell them to Europeans or Arabs, just depending on what, whether they were in West or East Africa. So yeah, there's a huge argument for reparations there. Oh, sorry guys, I've been missing the chat. Oh, it was the YouTube family. Okay. That's right. Okay, so you're saying Dave East was saying, okay, so after he called her a bum, the baby's mother said, oh, wow, that she could have his features as long as the little girl had the mom cut. Wow. Well, he knew what she was when he got with her. He knew what she was. One side it said African diaspora. Yep. She's been watching stuff like that too long. Exactly, Lee. She complained about not being allowed on the panel to talk about reparations. They don't understand that if this conversation happens on a national level, now I will admit, I do believe that Yvette Carnell and Tone Talks made this a national conversation. But when they start having this conversation politically, it's going to be politicians. It's going to be politicians basically saying, what can we present to the public that would be a satisfactory compromise for both sides? That's the way the conversation is going to go. Yeah. Carnesia, Africa should own up to their role in the slave trade. They won't, and Black people in the U.S. won't require them to. Listo said Carter G. Woodson wrote a book about free Blacks owning 12,000 slaves. Black male slavers wouldn't give up their Black women. Wouldn't give them their freedom papers as a way to get the Black woman to submit. Thanks for the leak, Miss Divine. Hikate said you have a sister from a Kenyan mother. You have the same dad. She grew up in Kenya. Your dad traveled the world. Obviously, me and her one day had a conversation about how Africans sold other Africans. It's the truth. One-sided loyalty, that is a lot of the men in those circles, unfortunately. They deny the fact that they choose certain women because of their closeness to whiteness. Okay? Elevated and Rising said, I'm tired of niggas. That's my morning statement. Uh-huh. One-sided loyalty. Yeah, that's true. They say they're under a curse. But like I've said before, they don't read the stuff that they claim to believe. So if they believe the part about them being cursed, then they have to also understand that it's because they disobeyed their God. Not the entire continent, African diaspora. And if all we need is a verbal owning up to it from the people who actually put us in the position, or put our ancestors in the position to be enslaved, then why would we require more from anyone else? Yep, slavery is alive and well in Africa tonight. And unfortunately, a lot of Black women and girls who try to immigrate to Europe end up being sold as sex slaves by other Africans. Nyla said, that reminds you of a picture on Facebook you saw from a relative. It showed Black women will forgive Black men for anything. Yep, Lee. American Blacks won't press African countries, but at least 2 African countries have apologized for their roles in slavery, Ghana and Benin so far. Well, because when people talk about the monetary aspect of reparations, they understand, like when people, would point out that maybe the African countries with an active role, A, probably don't have the money to pay reparations without making themselves insolvent, and B, a lot of those countries did not exist as nations at the time of the slave trade. Because I've seen people make that argument. They said, well, what we know as Ghana or Benin did not exist at the time of the slave trade, so we can't make them pay reparations. And it's like, well, okay, then why would you not understand that prior to the American Revolution, the Revolutionary War, there was no United States. So you cannot hold the U.S. responsible for reparations for a period of time prior to when it existed. I understand, Lolo. He said listening and cleaning. Thank you for listening. Hakate said, you don't claim that Deuteronomy-ish. Truly so, African diaspora, the U.S. has also apologized for slavery. If an apology from the U.S. isn't enough, then neither are the verbal apologies from Africa. They should be sued too. Do you understand that that is the only way that the reparations conversation would be taken seriously? Is to hold everyone accountable who played in Africa, who played a role in it. Whether you're talking about the countries in Africa, the countries in the U.S., the European colonial powers for the period prior to when the U.S. government existed. If you hold everyone accountable, you remove a significant portion of the arguments against it. Yep, one-sided loyalty. All the reparations they wanted. Let me tell you something. Immediately following slavery and the civil rights era, and even when you think about during the days of the Black Panther movement, where you had high-ranking Black male Black Panthers, okay, who said that sleeping with Black women was oppression, and they viewed sleeping as white women as freedom. Black men who could have pursued reparations wanted to be able to assimilate into white society, and they wanted sexual access to white women. They wanted sexual access to the overseer's daughter. Okay? That's what they fought for. And that's what they got. Nyla Moon, mammies do make us all look bad. One side has said the Hebrew Niggerites claim they are the chosen people in that Bible, which has been written and revised over and over again in that book of Niggeronomy. Miss Devine, you asked for a landscaping company name. Okay. Elevated and Rising gave a name. That's true, Carnisha. I saw something that said that something like 40-something% of white women during that time were slave owners. Because they could inherit slaves through wills. And a lot of times they also, like, say you had these white families that own plantations. The white women would have black women who were slaves, and their specific role was to, maybe watch the children or serve as a maid for white women. And so even if they didn't directly own slaves, they benefited from slavery. And of course, they benefited from the profits that their families made. And notice, if you think about how long black men have been having sex with white women, you notice none of those black men, including black men like Frederick Douglass, none of those black men used their sexual access to white women to pursue reparations. You notice that? So it's kind of, it's unfortunate, but I don't see a path to how it could actually happen. Because like I said, the people who should have been pursuing it didn't pursue it. They didn't ask for it. They didn't want it. During the days of the Talented 10th, a lot of those black people from that time did not want to be associated with like poorer black people. So they didn't, in a lot of cases, do anything to work with them on a massive level. So, it's kind of, that was his name, Listo. It's kind of not going to happen. You said Eldridge Cleaver, the rapist, said sleeping with white women was like freedom. Okay? So I don't understand, and I'm not going to try to make myself understand, but I don't understand why black women, after all of the evidence, I don't understand why black women think that there could actually be any situation where we would reasonably expect black men to act on our behalf. When anytime they have had an opportunity to separate themselves from black women, they have done it. Anytime they have built movements, they have made it clear that those movements were not based on anything positive for black women. And black women in those movements were solely there to mule for black men. That's it. That's right, one-sided loyalty. Black men don't want to dismantle white supremacy. He just hates the position he's in, because if he had a patriarchy, which they don't, a pimparch, you already know what would happen to us. Yep, they have a pimparchy. Black men have no problem with white supremacy. They just want to trade places with the white man. Okay? And don't have the power to do it. That's funny, elevated and rising. That's truly. There are cases of slave owners freeing slaves in their wills, but their white woman heirs would ignore the will and keep the slaves. Hecate said, you believe white women who weren't married and owned slaves were probably sleeping with them to begin with? Oh, yeah. Yep. There was a black guy who actually wrote an autobiography about that. Like immediately following slavery, how he was having an affair with one of the white women in the family that owned him. One-sided loyalty said all the Hebrew Nigerites, no-teps, Pan-Africans, conscious people, etc. say the black male is the original man. And they say God and white man is the devil. So how can the devil not let God do anything? That's true. Carnisha said, you believe that black men were the ones that helped slave masters and owners come up with the colorist system of hierarchy, slave worker system who worked in the house, in the field, and in between. It's possible. It's possible. Exactly, Nyla Moon. You know black males don't respect black women when one of the prominent civil rights figures refers to sleeping with black women as oppression, not to mention him being a rapist, and they still uplift and support his image. And that goes to show you guys that, you know, black quote unquote liberation was never about support for black women. It was never about providing a family and economic structure for black women. You can even go back to Frederick Douglass, who used his black wife to get his freedom papers. Okay? When people talk about the story of Frederick Douglass, they often leave that out. His black wife played a pivotal role in helping him escape from slavery. And after all of those years of marriage, when she was sick and on her deathbed, he started seeing a white woman and was bringing that cunt into his black wife's house as she was on her deathbed. When his black wife died, he married the white woman that he cheated on his black wife with. So all of the, you know, writings and papers and other things of Frederick Douglass flowed into whiteness. So it's been happening for well over a century. Well over a century. It has never been a requirement for black men who are civil rights figures to be romantically linked to black women. And now that black women are speaking out on it, people are ignoring history. They're gaslighting, they're deflecting from the topic. Lee, that's a good point. You said black women are mere pawns to black men to be used for whatever purpose improves the lives of black men. Boom. And it's crazy to me that so many black women accept that role. You're right, Nala Moon. One-sided loyalty said, shut the F up, because black males say, well, black women raise black men to be this and that, but y'all call the white man is the devil. But who raises the white man to be the devil? Who raises the white man to put you in the condition of being a bottom-feeding, conquered male? See, you know what it is? White women require their sons to build for future generations of white women, even when that means subjugating and oppressing other people. Oh, but they'll never point that out. Who raised the white man to be the devil? Miss Divine Brown, white supremacy allows them not to do shit. Build, provide, protect, take responsibility, nothing. On top of that, they get to pimp black women's resources, then complain about injustices for reprieve. See, this is why they don't want these conversations to happen. This is why they come into every black woman's space that is not a private space on social media, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, okay? This is why they come into those spaces, because they don't want us telling the truth. These white women that these niggas claim to be so much better than black women are the white women who are raising her white sons to keep their foot on your necks. Girl, one-sided loyalty said they say they're the original man. The black man is God, but the white man is the devil. So the devil conquered God? Okay, we having a different kind of church this Sunday, y'all. Miss Divine Brown said, someone keeps posting and my ass is itching. Let me see. Carnisha said, one-side loyalty is for suckers. You are telling the truth, and I can't stand social justice warriors on every level. One-sided said, pick-me mammies are the worst. They're precious Beckys who they put on a pedestal. So when they're blaming all of the failures of the black community on black women, they say, well, who's raising these children? Who's raising these sons who are going, in and out of jail, whatever they're talking about. But they never want to say who raised the white man to pay you an average of $10,000 less a year than your white male counterparts. Huh? Who raised the white men who created the prison industrial complex? Who raised the white men who own the Fortune 100 and 500 and 1,000 companies who invest millions, if not billions of dollars a year into that prison industrial complex to keep locking your ass up? Who raised the white men who run the legal system, with all the disparities that y'all are talking about? How we need criminal justice reform because black people are sentenced certain ways. Who raised the white men who created those systems? The white men who maintained those systems. He was taught by his mother to build for her and future generations of white women, even if that means keeping you where you're at. Okay? Miss Divine Brown said they like to debate moral victories by saying white men are the devil. They're trying to appear morally superior. Yep. You said that works with black women. With me, I respect winners. Exactly. Do you understand conversations on social media will not affect any kind of change? But like you said, they like to debate moral victories. Right, Bruna. You said he takes so much pride in being a descendant of a man who used his black wife to get his freedom papers. Do you understand? That nigga will never live that down. I'm sorry. Frederick Douglass, I ain't gonna say that. It's a Sunday. It's a Sunday, so I'm gonna be nice. But Frederick Douglass will never live that down, as far as I'm concerned. That is a complete and permanent stain on his legacy. His black, long-suffering wife put her life on the line. Do you understand that if you aided and abetted a black person who was running away from slavery, I believe that was like a federal crime, especially if you were helping them go across state lines. She helped that nigga get his freedom, and he repaid her in her later years by bringing the overseer's daughter into her house while she was on her deathbed. Okay? Listo said it was completely colorism. It was white men giving their biracial kids the easy jobs on the plantation. A lot of it was nepotism. We, as usual, took the system to heart and became superior colorists to whites. Boom. You said they're the worst, especially the capering Kellys. Yep, Carnisha. One side has said, yes, yep. They tell on themselves, like KSC said. So the white man is the superior one then if he won't let you do anything or conquer you. See, they don't want us having, they don't want black women thinking like this. If black women start raising their black sons in a way where they're told that they're required to build for black women, do you understand that Blackistan would be in an uproar? More black women started raising their black daughters to be hypergamous. See, black men don't like hypergamy because that would mean that many of them would not be eligible or suitable partners for marriage or relationships. But what they do is they craft all their arguments, you know, and wrap it up in racial, you know, euphemisms to play on black women's emotions. Marriage is about white supremacy, and why are we letting white people define what our relationships are? It's like, okay, sis, when you're 65 and broke and poor, remember what you said. Remember what you said about marriage. When we're over here able to be retired and traveling and doing what we want to do, because we took certain things into consideration, don't ask me for shit. Don't ask me for $5 if you were one of these wretched bitches who were out here telling other black women that valuing marriage meant that you were trying to be quote unquote white. If you were encouraging other black women to consider polygamous relationships, when you end up broke, poor, and destitute, I don't want to hear it. Nyla Moon said, I'm so mad at you for making me read that with Tariq's voice in mind at the end. I'm a descendant of Frederick Douglass. I'll have to admit that was funny when they went through that whole thing. That was very funny. One-sided loyalty said, see, these black males brainwash these mammy handmade mules. Everything they say, everything they say, the mammy has to agree with. You said, damn that, like KSC said, yep, I've got questions. And black males will trick these pro-whack brides. Very true, Nyla. If that isn't evidence that black males don't have a sense of loyalty, then I don't know what is. I brought this up, I think, on the other channel. White women who are in white supremacist circles make it very clear to those white men, if you want our support comes with requirements. Our support means that you build for white women and white children. You notice what you don't see in black supremacist spaces? You don't see black women requiring anything for themselves or their children. Let me tell you something. White women in the alt-right, okay? They said, if you want our support, then you're not going to treat white women in these spaces like we're second class. All right? White women make it very clear. If you are a white man and you're talking about pro-whiteness, being loyal to pro-whiteness means being loyal to white women. Black women in pro-black spaces are not requiring that for the most part. You don't see too many of them saying loyalty to blackness means loyalty to the black woman and the black child. Okay? It means loyalty, protection, provision. They're not requiring that. Ms. Divine Brown said, no one should keep saying aloud they are conquered or keep going on and on about their losses. Yep. Black males use this to garner sympathy at the cost of their manhood. And it ends up working for them. It's true. That's why you got black men running around on Facebook. I'm telling you, it was one post that went semi-viral. Oh, divestment is about anti-black men and they hate black men and they're triggered by black men. So there are certain things that have to go without saying. When you see the position of the black male, that speaks for itself. You're right. You're right, Mr. Vine. That's right, Bruna. It was descendants. I'm gonna hurt my throat trying to say it the way they were when they were clowning him, Bruna. But that was funny. I'm not even gonna lie. That was funny as hell. Carnisha said white women came up on their own feminist movement because they stole it from a black woman named Alice Walker, who created the womanist movement to be double minorities. I'm gonna tell you what happened, because I think let me tell you where the feminist movement started to gain ground. There was something called the Seneca Falls Convention. I think it was 1848, but I'm sorry, y'all, I ain't the best with years, but I believe it was 1848. Yep, July of 1848. That launched the movement for women's rights, particularly voting rights. Okay? But where the feminist movement kind of really started to sprint forward is that white women like Susan B. Anthony were offended that, they were offended about the Reconstruction era amendments, 13, 14, and 15. And they were offended that legally black men were given the right to vote ahead of white women. You had women like Susan B. Anthony and others literally saying, oh, well, you've given these brutes the right to vote ahead of your own wives, daughters, and mothers. Okay? So the white woman's feminist movement really gained a lot of traction because you already had Seneca Falls in 1848, right? But the white woman's feminist movement gained a lot of traction because white women were heavily offended that Black men were legally granted the right to vote ahead of him. And do you wonder, see, they don't think about, Black men don't think about shit, y'all. You gotta understand that as more and more white women got offended by the Reconstruction era amendments, right? Then you have the Reconstruction era ending in 1877. And then you have the Jim Crow era. Why? In part because a lot of white women who were previously abolitionists, they supported ending slavery. When slavery ended and they started seeing Black men get certain rights ahead of them, they pulled their support. And so that is why we went from slavery into another form of oppression, because Black men started to lose a lot of their white women allies. Now, what they did steal from Alice Walker and Kimberly Crenshaw was pretty much because feminism has occurred in a couple of different waves, right? Some people would say we're in third or fourth wave feminism. But what they did steal from Black women is this idea that you have women who deal with multiple forms of discrimination. So today, when you hear about the concept of intersectionality and feminism, it's linked to everyone who is not a white woman. But the concept of intersectionality came from a Black woman, Kimberly Crenshaw, who was influenced by Alice Walker, okay? And I believe in 1989, in her dissertation, she came up with the term intersectionality and specifically defined it to describe the dual identity that we have as Black women and the double forms of discrimination that we have. And so these later waves of feminism did steal that term intersectionality from her. And in doing so, in my opinion, they diluted the role of Black women in feminist spaces, because if a term that was meant to define us now is an umbrella term for everyone else, that means that's less space for Black women to be heard. I'm sorry if that was really long. Miss Divine Brown said, Black males playing the downtrodden role. Yep, get them sympathy, support, and punani from Black and non-Black women. You're right. Them screaming injustices makes other women want to hold them down. He's their poor baby. That's true. And see, that's why it's become so important for us to kind of let it be clear, and frankly, to let people know that they're dead wrong when they try to say that divestment is about a hatred of Black men. Because do you understand what Black men and their handmaidens do? Is they take anything that's supposed to be meaningful to Black women and girls, they find a way to make it about Black men. So this is why anytime Black women have tried to organize in ways that would have allowed us to address that intersectionality that we deal with, right? Black men say, well, this is against us. You're doing this because you hate us. And what that has done, unfortunately, is it has shut down a lot of the movements and a lot of the conversations that Black women could have had. And it's created this space where, in order to show their loyalty to Black men, Black women who are pro-Black have to act in ways that frankly are very treacherous to divested Black women. Okay? One-sided loyalty. Wait, did I skip something? Sorry, guys. I think I skipped some stuff. Okay. One-sided loyalty said, no, they don't want Black women thinking like this. They want us to agree with everything that Black males say. Yep. Collectivism doesn't benefit us at all. Carnisha said, look at the Me Too movement. It was created and founded by a Black woman. Yep. And they stole it from her to use for themselves. She created the hashtag. Think about the irony. The hashtag Me Too, I believe, was created in response to the allegations against Harvey Weinstein. And so there are all these conversations being had about sexual harassment and things like that. And a Black woman created the hashtag Me Too as a way of saying, well, Black women and girls are sexually victimized, sexually violated, and that is not recognized. And then you had all of these Black women on Twitter sharing their experiences with being sexually abused, raped, molested. And when they shared their stories on Twitter, they used the hashtag Me Too. White women used that to their advantage. And so most of the prominent men in positions of power who have been held accountable for anything in the Me Too era have actually been white men. There was an article, I believe, by Thoughty or something like that, Thoughy, okay, not like not Thoty, okay? But they did an article, and I think it was like a list of 279 men who had maybe lost jobs, who had perhaps dealt with some legal issues. 279 men, and the majority of those men were white men. But do you see that even with the Me Too hashtag, because of, guys like Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, who are sexual deviants, you now have Black people saying, well, the Me Too movement was created to put Black men down. If the nigga is out here raping women, okay, then he does not deserve to be defended. These are not men. R. Kelly and Bill Cosby are not men who brushed beside a woman in the office or who asked a woman out twice and she got offended. These are men, in the case of Bill Cosby, who drugged women and sexually violated them. In the case of R. Kelly, who had sex with underage girls and in some cases transported them across state lines. So back to Miss Divine Brown's point about how Black men will use certain situations to get sympathy. Anytime Black women try to speak about our issues, it's like they have a way of saying, oh, this is about tearing us down. It's sick. It's sick, it's sick, it's sick. Miss Divine Brown, for other Black women, Black males shouting out how they can't, won't do is a conversation starter, trying to figure out, to fill in the gap. For you, the conversation ends right then and there. I know that's right. Point you to the winner. That's right. Exactly, Lee Stowe. Black men purposely only blame white men and not white women for oppression as a way to make Black men swirling with white women okay, while making Black women swirling with white men a traitorous act. Boom. Because back to Miss One-Sided Loyalty's question. Who raised Brad to oppress Tyrone? Who raised him? They don't want to talk about that. One-Sided Loyalty said, if Black women teach our daughters to be hypergamous, then Black males are not the choice. They will be mad because, remember, they told us to choose better. Yep. Carnisha Jones, look, yep. They say these hoes ain't loyal. They're talking about us Black women. Yep. The ones who are not loyal are you niggas. That's right. Miss Divine Brown said, yes. Boom. Miss Divine Brown said, to Listo's point, they also only blame white men and not white women for oppression to make both Black women and white men their oppressors. Because do you understand that Black men view us sharing the ways that we have been violated as oppression? They even view Black women saying, I'm going to be self first as a form of oppression. Because do you understand that in a lot of the spaces off of YouTube where Black women are talking about divestment, they don't even talk about Black men, okay? That's how done they are. And in those spaces, they are solely pouring into Black women who are divested or divesting. And Black men will still troll those spaces. So even when you're not talking about them, you're not thinking about them. Black women having conversations about being self-first is so triggering to Black men, and they view it as oppression. Because if you are not a mule, if you are not trying to carry the community, in quotes, right? Because we know there is no community unless you are saying that the dysfunctional state that most Black people operate in is a community, okay? But if you're not willing to carry that on your back, you're not willing to carry the load for Black men, then you are thrown into the same boat as white men, okay? Black males say that you can be about Black power and date out your race. Yep, that's pretty much what they're saying by supporting certain Black men who do that, and they've supported it over time. Frederick Douglass, Eldridge Cleaver, certain niggas on YouTube who shall remain nameless, okay? Black men are making it clear, and Black women go along with it. They go along with it. You understand? In white supremacist spaces, that would never work. A white man who called himself white first could never be married to or even romantically associated with anything but a white woman. But in Black first spaces, and I'm going to keep saying it as long as they keep doing it, in Black first spaces, Black women don't have any requirements for the Black men, and then have the nerve to look at divested Black women or Black women in interracial relationships and try to tell us what we should require. They try to tell single Black women who exclusively date non-Black men, try to tell y'all what standards to have. And I'm like, girl, you don't have standards for yourself or the niggas that you support. So you can't talk to me. You can't talk to me about none of that shit. Mr. Divine Brown said, sidebar, eating for the first time today. Ooh, keto pancakes and sausage with sugar-free syrup. That sounds good. African diaspora. Okay, so now you're not asking me a trollish question, so I'll answer you. You said, what do you think of biracial women who are labeled Black? Me personally, I don't think it's fair to make biracial people choose a race, because they're both, right? But also for Black women who are concerned about colorism, you can't complain about colorism and then label biracial women as Black. Now, I understand that biracial women with a Black parent have a connection to Blackness, through their Black family members. But honestly, I think I think those conversations about how biracial women should be identified, biracial women need to be included in those conversations. I don't think it's up to us to label them as Black. As a matter of fact, you have a lot of biracial people who are now petitioning to have like a separate category on the census, which is the same thing they do in places like the UK and other countries. Biracial people are allowed to specifically identify as biracial. So that's my thoughts on that. Oh, Hikate, you said I sounded like her when I did the mockery. I love her content. I love CK. Carnisha said Black men and boys as Black males. Black men and boys as Black males. You said they're the most conquered around the world because they like being kicked down. If they didn't like it, they would fight against it. True, Miss Divine. You said women fought hard for the right to vote just like their husbands. But white women tend to vote the way their husbands do. They do. They really do. One-sided loyalty is for suckers. Pygmishas hate the color purple. They say it puts the Black men down. They say the white men done worse, but let them put a movie out about Black women. Crickets, about Becky doing worse. But see, that goes back to the fact that anytime Black women try to have conversations about the way that we are abused, we're told, oh, it's putting Black men down. Like I said, I'm sorry. If a man is abusing a woman, he's raping a woman, he's molesting children, he deserves to be put down literally and figuratively, okay? Listo said, blaming Black women is the Black man's way of walking away from Blackness without guilt. Yep, it's a way of making us the scapegoat. But a lot of Black women in the collective don't understand what these treasonous, treacherous men are doing. Making us the reason for all of their problems and publicly throwing mud at our image means that they can say, well, we had to walk away from Black women because they're so horrible, right? But there's no, listen, they don't have the type of data behind them that we have when we talk about our experiences with the Black male collective. But that's what they do. Scapegoating us gives them an excuse to quote unquote save themselves, Black men. Do you realize that now, like, they're so unoriginal that they're even hijacking the term divest? If you look around on social media, off of YouTube, you got these niggas saying that they're now divesting from Black women. And it's like, well, okay, you're finally saying what you've been doing. Because anytime, I'm sorry, and I'm going to keep talking about that ashy ass nigga. I don't give a fuck if he's dead, okay? You got to think about the treachery. You know, that nigga was born a slave. He was a slave. He was a field slave. So he was in the trenches. That woman could have gotten beaten, lynched, or thrown in jail for helping him get his freedom papers. She helps him get his freedom papers, and on her deathbed, he brings the overseer's daughter into her house. I hope his ass is burning in hell for eternity for that. That's treason. A woman helps you get your freedom papers. A black woman, a dark-skinned black woman, helped him get his freedom papers. Do you understand, too, that free blacks who were caught doing that were sometimes shipped down south and were sold as slaves? She really put herself on the line. Ooh. So they've been walking away from blackness. They've been, even Eldridge Cleaver. And the fact that he was able to maintain his position of power within that organization after saying that sleeping with black women is oppression. I don't get it. Nyla Moon said, I mean, it makes sense sort of since they have to live with him. And yeah, they probably think he has their best interest. Miss Divines, yep, you said you're not mad at what they do. You see it doing them and looking out for themselves. You're in awe of how they're allowed to do it by black women. Right. Do you understand that no black woman should ever support anything connected to Frederick Douglass? Fuck Frederick Douglass. No black woman should ever read his books. No black woman, listen, beyond what is required in history classes in school, right? No black women should look to Frederick Douglass as a leader after the way that he treated his black wife. But yet, they allow it. Do you understand that after Eldridge Cleaver said that sleeping with black women was a form of oppression, every black woman should have left the Black Panther movement? Every black woman should have immediately disassociated themselves with the Black Panthers and not gone back unless they got rid of him? That would be loyalty to self and loyalty to your image as a black woman. So to sit in spaces with niggas like Frederick Douglass, see, a lot of these black men on YouTube, they're probably, a lot of them are probably like the great, probably more like great grandson or great nephew of niggas like Frederick Douglass and Eldridge Cleaver. Eldridge Cleaver's son or grandson is probably somewhere running around on YouTube and social media. And y'all are sitting up in spaces with those niggas. Y'all are sitting in spaces with men who support things like Save Yourselves, Black Men, which I've said it before and I'll say it again. Save Yourselves, Black Men is a black male divestment movement. But it's mind-boggling to me that black women are comfortable with it. Because do you understand that black men wouldn't be able to move the way they moved without the support of black women? Because they use black women as gatekeepers. They use black women in certain spaces to attract other black women. That's why, in my opinion, it's so important for some black men to involve themselves in these conversations. And when they see that there are quite a few divested black women who are not interested in hearing from them, what they start doing is they start using black women. Okay? But black women are active participants in their own oppression. You know? Mr. Vine Brown said, yep, I don't blame her. White men have built a report and shown whatever he builds, she will be taken care of. That's very true. Because white women require it. See, a lot of Black women didn't pay attention. I know divested Black women did, but a lot of Black women didn't pay attention to what we witnessed during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. You thought those white women on different sides were disagreeing, okay? But what they really did on both sides, what they really did is say, okay, if there's an accusation, we will fully pursue it, and we don't care who you are. And I believe her name is Suzanne Collins, a Republican from Maine, who supported Brett Kavanaugh. But even though she supported him, she made sure that she publicly let her white sisters know that she was on code. She said she supports the victim, and she said that she hoped to work with her white women colleagues on the Democratic side, basically. She says she hopes to work with them to create an environment so that women who are victimized feel comfortable reporting things timely enough to get justice. And she made it very clear, the only reason I'm voting the way that I am is because I don't believe that there's a way to fairly pursue this. But let me be clear, I support victims, aka white women. I still support you. Just in the future, let's report this stuff a little bit sooner. A lot of y'all thought y'all were seeing this big argument and a big back and forth. No, no, no. That was a public display of white women being on code even when they disagree, and a public crack of the whip to white men who would fall out of line. We don't care if you're trying to be a Supreme Court justice. We will still put you in the hot seat. Can't explain that to a lot of these women. One-sided loyalty said, them Hebrew nigga-like saying the white men have set us up. But I heard your God put you in this position. Boom. You said, I love my Black kings. Yeah, but your Black kings don't love your dumb mammy ass. I scrolled ahead too soon. Oh, okay. Y'all got rid of them. That's fine. Hey, Chaz. Hey, Kay Johnson. Yes, Lolo. Bill Cosby is a rapist. Drugged them and had sex with them. Yep. Black Chaz. Black men never said anything when Lupita said Harvey Weinstein attempted to sexually assault her. Nothing, but they always ask about him in connection to Bill Cosby, but not in connection to a Black woman who said that he attempted to victimize her. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Mm-hmm. Lee said, if Black women want to know how to divest, practice hypergamy, make decisions that are gender first, they should observe and follow the actions of Black men. We've said it before here, and I'm going to say it again. Black men, your favorite nigga is not race loyal. Period. Black men are gender first. That is why they require everything to be about support and advocacy for the Black male. So even when it's time to address issues like child molestation and rape, if doing so means that a Black man would go to jail or prison, Black men will shut you down because they're about being Black male first. And Black women allow it. Okay, you said a movie years ago, it was a Black man talking about, it was a movie, okay, where a Black man said he wanted to kill white people. But with the white woman, he said he loved her. You said that movie showed you how Black males don't hate white supremacy. I'm telling y'all, we said it before, Black men don't hate white supremacy. They just want to trade places with the white man. And that's not going to happen because they don't have the desire to fight for that. And even if they had the desire to fight for it, they don't have the resources or the military power to outgun the white man. That's just the reality. Yep, Chad said Bill Cosby should have been in prison long ago. Black people have a high threshold for what they consider sexual assault. That's true. Black men get away with a lot of inappropriate behavior. Yes, yes, yes. They've done studies that show that, see, this is why these niggas get in trouble when they date non-Black women. They've done statistics that show that Black women deal with every kind of abuse at a higher rate than other races of women. So sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse. But what happens is those behaviors are normalized by Black people. So then what happens is when these Black men go into other spaces, whether you see them going to college or on jobs, when they go to other spaces and they repeat those behaviors, that's when they learn, okay, in normal functioning spaces, this behavior is criminal. That's why you hear that story of the Black guy who, something involving a bar or a club, and according to him, he was dancing with the white girl, and I guess he was seen leaving with her. And with whatever happened, the young lady accused him of rape or attempted rape, and he went to jail, or in prison, and a lot of Black people got upset about it. And I was like, well, it's possible that that's a situation where he crossed a line in a way that a Black woman would have been encouraged to shut down and not report it. But other groups of women are like, well, wait a minute, this is assault. You know. Let's see. Nyla said, a lot of the Black male's predatory behavior just keeps getting swept under the rug, and it's not fair to the Black women and children who have to go through it. That's very true, Nyla. That's very, very, very true. And it gets swept under the rug because holding them accountable is viewed as oppression, not only by Black men, but by the Black women who support them. So I'm telling you, a lot of times when they have these conversations about campus rape, you have a lot of people who now believe that campus rape is underreported on HBCU campuses, in part because Black women are made to feel guilty about reporting rapes when the perpetrator is a fellow Black male student. That's a good point, Listo. You said biracials of slavery were born due to a lack of choice. The Black community accepted them because they had nowhere to go. Today's biracials were born in free conditions. They don't need us to advocate for them. That's true tonight. You said the Black community is filled with predators because of women like the person who was in the chat. Very true. That's true, one-sided loyalty. They keep saying they don't need black women to make black children. Yes, Carnisha, I'm telling you, they are now saying that they are divested. I'm like, well, go right ahead. Me too, Carnisha. I love them. Exactly, Chaz. What did the colorist Black Panthers do for black women? Can someone tell me? Don't tell me about a lunch program for children either. Exactly. Lee Stowe said black women were lied to. It has never been a we thing. It has always been a black male only thing. Black women foolishly believe black men are allies because we share race, but black men don't love their race more than they love their gender. Very true, because you know what? The argument is, because this is the argument that people make when they say that they want black women to support black male spaces. The argument is that uplifting the black male will uplift the black race. That's not true. And the reason that that's not true is because, like I said, your favorite nigga is not race loyal. Your nigga isn't race loyal. Your uncles probably ain't race loyal. You don't raise your sons to be race loyal, okay? So, because you have black men who have specifically said that they don't feel a responsibility to black women, and they don't feel a responsibility to black children, they only feel responsible for the black woman or any children that's in their home. And because so many black men date out, okay, and nearly a quarter, I think something like 24% of newly married black men are not married to black women. So it is simply not beneficial. Oh, and the black men who claim that they love black women so much, because I got to point this out too. The black men who claim that they love black women so much are usually not married, if you pay attention to that on social media. So what that means is that it does not benefit black women to continue to pour their resources, their time, or their energy into men who are not loyal to them, because what could very easily happen, and what has happened time and time and time again, is black men have proven that once they get anything of value, they're going to take it and shoot their shot with other races of women. And even if they try it with other races of women and then come back to black women, usually by then, if they were married, they've been through a divorce and they've been, through the financial things that come with that. They have a couple of kids. They have too much shit to deal with. Bottom line, okay? But the black women who support black male spaces do it because they repeat the black man's talking point. Uplifting the black male will benefit us all. Like, if that's what you think after seeing these men's behavior, then it's your money. Go right ahead. Lyra said, black women deserve their curse for always aiding their ashy king. Listen, any black woman who would throw other black women under the bus or who would act as agents for black men, I don't feel any sympathy for them, and they get what they get. That's what they say about divested black women, right? Even when they're looking at stories where a black woman in an interracial relationship has died due to domestic violence, they will be in the comment sections laughing at that woman's death with no regard for the fact that, that woman probably has family members and friends who are tuned into social media. They will laugh at that woman's death. They will say that she deserved to die. And they will say that they feel no sympathy for those black women. They feel no sympathy or empathy for them. And it's not just the content creators. It's the black women commenting. So for Black women who feel that way, it's like, okay, if you run behind those Black men at the expense of other Black women to the point where you will allow them to use you to harass and berate other Black women simply over a difference of opinion to the point that you're mocking their death, then you get what you get. Carnisha said it's the same thing with the Black Panther movement and the movie Black Panther is the byproducts of one another, because guess what? In the next movie, his love interest is going to be a non-Black woman. I'm not surprised. And they're probably doing that to pander to Black men and non-Black women. Black men love to see relationships with themselves and non-Black women. They're only triggered by interracial relationships if it's a Black woman with a non-Black man. But yep. And if you look at most of the guys in the movie are not actually with Black women. Now they can be with who they want to be with. But it's just interesting to me that Black women have no requirements for their loyalty or support. None. And when you try to tell them that they should have requirements, instead of getting upset with the men who are oppressing them, they direct all of their anger at other Black women. And if you pay attention, the majority of women who do that are only cool with other Black women that they are mostly in agreement with. I'm telling y'all, a lot of this stuff happens because Black women allow it. And Black men hate divestment because Black men hate Black women. And I'm going to tell you why they hate Black women. Because they don't feel like they should have to do anything to get Black women's attention, money, or anything. They don't believe that Black women have the right to hold them to a standard. So that's why they hate divestment. We're telling Black women not to be self-sacrificing. We're telling Black women to be self-first, to be individual-minded instead of being collective-minded. We're telling Black women to have standards no matter what group of men you decide to date. And the same Black men who will tell Black women, oh, well, you should have chosen better when you get into certain situations, those are the same Black men who get upset with you for having standards. Right? One-sided loyalty. Yeah, if they can say they're divested, then we can call ourselves Save Yourselves Black women. Oh my gosh, if I get bored one day and feel like trolling the trolls, I'm gonna do something on that. That is funny as hell. Boom, Chaz. Black women helped all those actors in Black Panther feed their non-Black wives. It's one of the highest grossing films ever, and I know it was not Black men buying most of the tickets. See, but they allow it. And a lot of those men's wives probably are, if they work, they are pursuing jobs where they're, following their dreams or whatever, or they don't work. A lot of those Black women who supported the Black Panther movie, they're working 2 jobs or they're working 1 job where they have to work a bunch of hours to support themselves. Pouring all of their money into these men who make it clear that they don't prioritize Black women, while their non-Black wives get to chill in the country club. While their non-Black wives are in the country club or getting their nails and feet done once a week, getting their hair done once a week, taking trips every few months. The Black woman collective is struggling. But see, Black women participate in their own oppression. And that mindset has to be broken. One thing I will say is the good thing about social media is a lot of Black men are telling on themselves. And so that alone will encourage Black women to divest. Because understand something, Black women, divested Black women, I should say. The Black woman collective is not going to be inspired to divest simply from hearing conversations from divested Black women, because these conversations have existed on all social media platforms pretty much ever since most people had a smartphone. Okay? What will probably encourage more Black women to divest is hearing the mindset of the Black male and understanding how disloyal and treacherous the majority of them are. And Black men are picking up on that. And that's why they're softening the tone. And if y'all have been around for a while, it's a couple of us that have talked about that already, how they're softening the tone. Because Black male identified women are going to be influenced by Black men more than they are by Black women. Okay? You're right, one-sided. They thought we were going to mule for them forever. Miss Divine Brown said, Walter Lee Hampton did a video recently talking about how a black male, said he was wrong for pressing charges against his ex who tried to give him HIV because it was putting a brother in jail. Exactly. See, it's not just the heterosexual Black woman that's dealing with these things. Walter Lee Hampton is a Black man who is gay, who tries to educate other gay Black men, but also Black women, about the promiscuity of Black men. And if you guys are not familiar with some of his most recent videos, he was dating a guy, and during the relationship found out that the guy was HIV positive, had known about it for some time, and never disclosed it to him. Now, so far, Walter has been tested and thankfully has not contracted HIV. But since that man lied to him and concealed his HIV status, he pressed charges, and I think that's the right thing to do. But you have other Black men telling him he's wrong. There are people who have uploaded content on YouTube who have said that they feel like he's being spiteful. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? That man literally could have given him a disease that would eventually kill him, would put him in a situation where he would have to be on medication for the rest of his life. But they're more concerned about a nigga being in jail than they are concerned about the fact that this man, because he was lying about his HIV status, was using his dick as a loaded gun. Okay? I've been keeping up with that saga, Miss Divine Brown. I'm sure it's a lot for him to share that, but I am glad that he's educating people on what he's experienced. Yep, you're right, one-sided. They always say that the men is the head because Black males are gender first. And Black men being gender first is not beneficial to Black women unless you were talking about a collective of men who believes in providing a family, community, and economic structure for the women in that collective. Black men don't believe in doing it. They said it first. Patricia Blackburn. Wow. You said Cosby went to lunch with the Black man who assaulted his daughter? to tell him no charges would be filed because he was worried about the perp's career. So they care more about other Black men than they do their own daughters. I believe that. Miss Divine Brown said they pulled this shit in the gay world too. Walter was like, what about what the guy tried to do to him? They had nothing to say but forgiveness talk, because do you understand that when these people talk about protecting the Black male image, they do it at the expense of everyone else around them. Right, Carnisha, you said these same mammies and Black males say that Black people can't be serial killers, right? What about the Atlanta child killer? The DC sniper? And actually, let me look up this statistic. Hold on. Because I can't remember the percentage of mass shooters who are Black males. Let me see. Yep. Even if you think about it was just a mass shooting in Virginia Beach, and that was a Black guy. Shoot, there were just 2 church shootings, and those were Black guys. As a matter of fact, boom, a 2016 New York Times report found that around 75% of mass shooters in 2015 were Black. The report defined mass shootings as incidents with 4 or more dead or injured. The report notes that the highly visible massacres were by white men, but the vast majority of shootings that did not get wide coverage were committed by Blacks, because this includes drive-by shootings and other routine acts of violence in quote-unquote economically downtrodden, i.e. Black neighborhoods. Okay? So when you count drive-by shootings and you look at shootings where more than 4 or more people were killed or injured, in 2015, 75% of mass shootings using those parameters were committed. Now, the article said by Blacks, but if you look at certain crime statistics, you know that the majority of people involved, shooting in situations where there's a drive-by shooting, the cookout gets shot up, playground, the park. The majority of the perpetrators are Black males. So you're right, Carnisha. Black men definitely have committed mass shootings, and they have been serial killers when you look at those, when you don't just look at the cases that are reported in the news. Because we know that unfortunately in a lot of situations where people are the victims of drive-by shootings, and I've heard of Black children as young as like 5 and 6 years old being killed because of drive-by shootings. A lot of those cases don't make national news, and a lot of people don't define those as mass shootings because, again, the way that Black men tend to be coddled by the media. You're right, Chaz. You said black people think sexual assault has to involve a penis. I think the case with that guy, yep, it was his tongue. Any foreign object you introduce to someone's body in a sexual manner can be sexual assault. Yep. Mm-hmm. I've seen people make that argument too, Miss Divine, where they say, because it was actually in one of Walter's video, he played this clip of this guy who was HIV positive in court, and he was saying that basically it was his partner's jobs to protect themselves. That's the excuse they're using. And you know, black women gotta pay attention to stuff like that. Because there's certain information out there that suggests that there are a lot more black men than you think that have sexual relationships or sexual encounters with other men. One-sided loyalty, you said they're going to say the white men made them do it. Right, Miss Divine Brown is responding to Nyla and said, yep, no one wants to live with that. You know, now for people who have it, it's like, okay, you got it, you got to deal with it, but that doesn't mean that other people want to deal with that shit. You know, I'm not trying to be like offensive, but come on. It's just like we support people who have cancer, right? And we're glad that there's research to help them live longer lives and to help them get cured. But that doesn't mean that you want cancer. Doesn't mean you want Parkinson's disease, Lou Gehrig's disease, whatever. You know? Patricia Blackburn said in 1989, NBC had a fit when he blamed his daughter. They hid the interview he did about it. Mike Tyson attacked his daughter and Cosby blamed his daughter. Well, see, now we know why. One sexual deviant defending another one. Carnisha said it's funny how they are protesting in black communities, especially in Miami and Atlanta, to stop gang violence and shootings in black communities. Yep, we're making ourselves and poor black sons. Oh, wow. Patricia said Cosby said powerful men are used to talking. Are used to taking what they want, and said Tyson did nothing wrong. Wow. Yeah, but see, this is because that is what a lot of black people believe, that if you put yourself in certain environments, it's your fault. And then wonder why so many black women are emotionally damaged and hurt. It's because we're not even able to acknowledge when we're abused. Listo said, black men out here wilding so much. Upon hearing there's been a mass shooting, I now expect it to be a black man. You said when your family tried to talk about how crazy white men are, you said that crazy white man has become the crazy black man. That's true, Carnisha. They killed each other by gun violence 7 times the rate. Yep. That they were killed by white police officers. Yep. But people won't talk about that, or they'll say that it just happens because of proximity. And my argument is, if it's just because of proximity, then why is the rate so much higher than other groups of men? Because, see, we know that black men hate black women, but what they won't admit is a lot of black men also hate each other. That's why they kill each other the way they do. They hate each other. They're jealous of each other. See, they talk about how black women are jealous of each other, and a lot of black women feed into that, because anytime you have a disagreement with some black women, they will use that accusation like a weapon. However, statistically speaking, our disagreements to each other generally don't end in gun violence. We're not shooting each other over Louboutins. I bet I pronounced that wrong. You know, those shoes with the red bottoms, whatever they're called. We're not shooting each other over, over dumb shit. We're not shooting each other because, oh, girl, when I walked past you in the club, you spilled a drink on my brand new dress. Not niggas. Not niggas. One wrong turn in their conversations with each other can end in gun violence, but they will say that Black women are the biggest threat to them. Oh no! Patricia said Cosby later, wow, did a smear tour about his daughter's addiction to keep a story about all his rapes from being printed. Listen, I don't care what nobody says. What's happening to Bill Cosby is karma. He completely, see, this is why it's weird. Well, Black men are gender first, so they support each other regardless. But Black men should not support Bill Cosby. He completely dumped over Black women, single mothers, and Black men or Black boys in poor areas. When, like, that pound cake speech, and Nikki Giovanni called him out on that too when he did that pound cake speech. But they're defending him. The Black collective is defending him. Miss Divine Brown said, for you to say you don't want HIV, you will be accused of creating stigma by making it sound like HIV is the worst disease when it's controllable and like diabetes. That is what the advocates say. But even though diabetes is controllable, right? For some people, there are some people who get diabetes and they still go blind. They still lose limbs. They have complications, if they have other illnesses. Diabetes can be pretty difficult to control. But you're right, that's what they'll say. And it's like, no, because to me, stigma would be mistreating people who had diseases like HIV, right? But now, you're right, even people saying, well, we should do everything possible to make sure that nobody else gets it. And that's not stigma. That would actually, over time, help prevent the spread and possibly contain it, by saying, okay, people, those of you who do not have it, this is what y'all can do. That's what they should be saying if they were advocates. But they're not. They're looking at those of us who are HIV and STD free and saying, well, you're wrong because you don't want this thing. It's like, no, nobody, it's just like nobody wants diabetes. Nobody wants strep throat, okay? Nobody wants any type of illness, right? Yep, Nyla Moon, you said it's sick that they think it's okay. You don't care if there's pills you can take. I wouldn't deal with the person who's HIV positive, and they shouldn't keep that info hidden. Exactly. It is disgusting and diabolical, Carnisha. Yes, one-sided loyalty. I'm telling you, anytime you can shoot each other over shoes, come on. Shooting each other over basic disagreements. But Black women are the ones that they say are jealous and can't maintain friendships. Now, sometimes it can be hard it is hard to be friends with Black women who are mammyish. But still, divested Black women and Black women who are pro-Black are not telling each other to pull up and meeting and fighting over YouTube. I saw that this week. 2 grown ass black men met up and apparently fought over a YouTube disagreement. Chaz said black women always defend black men when they are accused of some sexual violation. Yep. You hear it's always been initiating. Oh, wait, I missed it. You said you hear it's always been black women initiating the defense of the women lying. Yep, black women must let them defend themselves. I don't blame you, Mr. Wine Brown, because education can be the key to prevention. That's how I'd rather know about it so I don't get it. You know how to protect yourself. And also know the mindset of people who would know that they have a disease that they can transmit to others. Know that mindset. Because I'm going to tell y'all something. Those numbers are going to get worse. And they're going to get worse possibly for black women. Now, there is some hope. I'm seeing that the rates of new cases for black women is starting to go down. But those rates need to go all the way down. It's still too high. It's still too high. You're right, one-sided. They are dreaming about a fairy tale. And it's not going to happen. Yep, Chaz. In those cases, black women do it for them. Yeah, Patricia, it's possible. You said you're starting to wonder if the majority of Y chromosomes of African descent are faulty. The treachery and backwards thinking is worldwide. Oh, wow, Miss Divine. You said one of your cousins has been HIV positive for over 20 years. Oh, wow. She's lived longer with it than without it. You have a sister who is type 1 diabetes, and your cousin looks like she'll outlive your sister. Well, that's good that your cousin is doing well. So that means she's in treatment. That's good. That's good. One side has said, I heard that the mothers were on the front lines, not the father. See how even black males ain't even on the front lines when it involves their son? Listen, they used to make fun of Black Lives Matter. And the women who would be on the front lines of those protests, all over social media, black men were making fun of black women who were protesting for them. Carnisha, yeah, that's true. Like places like California, it's no longer a felony. And even if you report someone to the health department, the health department will not report the person to the police or give you information about that unless you actually slept with the person and they didn't tell you. So if you know that somebody on your job is out here having sex with people HIV positive and not disclosing it, and you report them to the health department, you can't do anything about it. All the health department will do is try to contact the person to get them in treatment. But you know why? I think it's because there's so many people getting it. It's so many people getting it, and they're trying to decriminalize it. And I think they're doing it not as any sort of advocacy for anyone, but it's because states don't want to, when people are in jail with any type of sickness or illness, the prison system or the jail is responsible for making sure that they get medication. And I think the states just don't want to pay for the medication for people who are locked up for not disclosing their HIV status. So they're decriminalizing it, which means that, that's going to be a public health concern. And decriminalizing it is probably going to make people feel uncomfortable going through the process of reporting it, because if you go through the process of report it, you go through all that trauma, and then the person only goes to jail for like 6 months. Hey, Not Eyes at the Cap. So they're still arguing about who won the fight, because what one guy did is he broke the other dude's cell phone. I know, y'all. It's kind of ratchetainment that I watched that, but I was bored, and it was in my my home recommended thing. But one dude broke the other guy's phone, so they both have different versions of what actually happened. But I haven't been keeping up with it anymore because I'm like, this is childish. Patricia, you said them not wanting Black women is a blessing. I've watched Black men swirl the white women in my area into the ground. Yep, they're filling up the projects in your city and the welfare lines. PBS, sometime last year, did a special on welfare and, the relationship between that and some of Trump's policies. And some of the white women that were part of that conversation, they were single mothers, and you looked at their children and you were like, okay. It was like, those are not Brad's children. That is Tyrone all day. Those women were fighting to keep like their welfare and their Section 8. I heard about that, Carnisha, that Ebola could be spread through sex. That is scary. Ooh, That is terrible. I'm glad that they've kind of gotten it under control, although I had heard that there was a bit of an outbreak in some part of West Africa, but I'm glad that they mostly contained it. Wow, one-sided loyalty. You said it was rumored that one of the boys in the Central Park 5 story was told by his father to admit to killing the lady so he wouldn't lose his job. Wow. Hecate, yeah, they know they're disposable. Miss Divine Brown said, it's not just education. You're obsessed and have always been since you were young. You feared it so much. Oh no, you wonder if you will bring it to myself by obsessing over it. No, don't think like that. I know I've been concerned about education because one of my really good friends, you know how you grow up around some kids and you just know that they're gay. And so like we all knew that he was gay by the time we were in like the 6th or the 7th grade. But he was such a cool person. And do you know that when, we were the same class. And so we graduated the same year, all that stuff. And do you know that he died of full-blown AIDS at 32? At 32 years old. Yeah. So I'm always concerned about education for it. And then my best friend's aunt, my best friend's aunt got HIV from her husband, and she died of full-blown AIDS. Then a girl that grew up down the street from my parents' house, I kid you not, I always knew, by the time I knew her, I knew that she lived with her grandparents. I never knew what happened to her mom and dad, but I didn't find out until we were adults that both of her parents had died from full blown AIDS. Because her father was a drug addict and apparently got it, through shooting up drugs like needles and gave it to her mother. And so both her parents died from it. So I've always been concerned about education. And then when you see the rates and you see the fact that out of all the women in the country, Black women are contracting HIV at higher rates than other groups of women. I just feel like Black women, we need to be informed, we need to protect ourselves, and we need to look at certain things to understand what is bringing certain things to us, okay? You're right, one-sided loyalty. Black men do love white supremacy. Carnisha, you said you agree it's crazy how the Central Park Five get protection but not Black women and little girls. Yeah, I mean, because that's my thing. It's like, if there was an injustice involved in that case, and it's good that they're getting justice, you know what I'm saying? I'm just noticing that Black women and girls don't get the same type of advocacy. They don't get the same type of support. Oh no! Nyla said you need to see this fight for research purposes. I'm telling you, dude broke the other guy's phone. So the one guy had his phone set up on the ground, and I guess he was live streaming or recording it, and the other dude literally broke it. So there's no footage of the fight, but you do see footage of them posturing, like they're about to fight before the other dude broke the phone. Lee said, you tried to drop your nephew off at his father's house. The father lives with the white woman in the projects. I believe it. I've seen it. One-sided loyalty. I don't know when Black women will get tired of it. But you know how it is as women. Sometimes as women, there's no timeline for something. When we're tired of something, we're just done. But some will get it and some won't. Yeah, Carnisha, I agree. I do think it should be a serious offense, whether it's capital murder or definitely a felony. But I'm telling you, they're not doing it because they don't want to be responsible for the long-term care of HIV positive inmates. That's why they're decriminalizing it. That's why certain states are going along with it. They don't want to be responsible for the medication. Miss Divine Brown said, oh no, your cousin got it when she was 17. She's 41 now and has teenage daughters. She looks good, pretty and thick in the hips, small in the waist. Your sister got diabetes at 6 and she's 39 now. Oh, wow, she got it at 17. But you know what? I have read that, if people are on medication, if they're on the HIV drugs, that they can still have kids and stuff. And the kids can be born without HIV. So that's why it's been a big push in parts of Africa, like places like Uganda, to get the women prenatal care. And as part of that, they test the women for HIV and they get them on treatment. And in doing that, there are some parts of Africa, like Uganda, who are seeing basically they're seeing reduced mother-to-child transmission. So that's good for her. So she was still able to do the things she wanted to do. It's just people will hear cases like that and then try to say, well, see, it's not so bad to have. But what people don't understand and I may not be saying this right because I don't know all the medical terminology, but you know how with any virus, it's more than one type of the virus, whether it's the flu virus, strep throat, whatever. So with like HIV, it's different types. It's like different strands of the virus. So some people do well with treatment because they have a less aggressive strand of the virus, or maybe, other health conditions. But then you have other people who they don't respond to the medication as well if they get a more aggressive form of it. But then again, I've read that you have a lot of people that if they're compliant with the medication, they can be like what they call undetectable. So they have like really, really low levels of HIV in the blood. And they can be healthy considering the fact that they have HIV, so they don't experience the worst parts of it. But I've read that a lot of people that experience health conditions from it, it's either because they have an aggressive strand of the virus or because they're not consistent with the medication. And they say that like when the people aren't consistent with the medication, that can cause them like a lot of problems. So that's good for her that she's doing everything she can to keep her health in order. That's really good for her. Right, Lee? I'm telling you, I was looking at that PBS documentary and I was like, wait a minute. Those kids ain't all the way white. It's like those are some biracial children in the welfare line with their white mother. Yeah, Hecate, those rates just need to go down. The Black Woman Collective has to be more vigilant about protecting our health. We really do. Because it's just, I don't know. It's sad when I like read some of the stories, One-sided loyalty said, the men said enough is enough, and the boy who cried, wolf, when are the Black women going to do the same? Not I, said the cat. See, you said, 2 Black women who died of AIDS from their husbands. And it's a lady on YouTube. She did this video one year on World AIDS Day. And she was telling a story about how she had been married to her husband for a pretty long time, And during the marriage, she found out that he was HIV positive, but he had gotten it before they got married. So through all of this, she finds out that he was bisexual. But in her case, she didn't get it. But, when she found out that he had it, she had to get tested. And, just to take certain precautions, they tested the children as well. None of them had it. But she shared her story. So it's a lot of people. See, this is why I like when people get married and stuff. And not just when you get married. Like before you have sex with someone, you need to go get tested with them. Because a lot of people will have shit and they'll lie about it. You know what I mean? But then also, when you get married, just because you're married doesn't mean that you shouldn't still get tested. You know what I mean? Because you just never know. Because men in general can be kind of predatory. Not all men, but I'm just saying it's their nature. So men are programmed to do and say whatever it takes to get what they want. It's just in their nature. So that's why a lot of them lie about shit, But what I'm saying is, even when you get married, you still got to get tested and stuff. But that is so sad, not I, said the cat. You knew 2 Black women who died of AIDS from their husbands. I'm telling you, my best friend's aunt is no longer here with us today because she got it from her husband. Woo! Yep, Miss Divine. You said the government wants people to catch it. I believe that. I believe it. Because it's a lot of money. See, the pharmaceutical industry is a big money maker. But y'all ladies know that. Y'all are smart women, so y'all know that already. But it's a lot of money in pharmaceuticals. And it's a lot of money in testing out certain things on people. So I'm going to tell you about this one thing they're doing, right? Which I can't believe people actually volunteered for this. So you know how they have that pill called PrEP, which is like, that's like an HIV prevention pill. So what they did is they said, okay, we're going to test a group of people and see what happens if we have them just take PrEP 48 hours after sex. So all of that, there's money in all of that, you guys. You guys are right. Bottom line, stay safe and protect yourselves. You know? This was a good conversation, you guys. My voice is starting to go out. So I'm going to go before I start coughing and stuff. I told y'all before, I have allergies real bad this time of year. But thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for participating in the conversation. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for your support. And I'll talk to you guys very soon. I hope you have a really, really good day, okay? Enjoy your Sunday. Bye, you guys.